From the Alabama Public Television State House studio in Montgomery, I'm Randy Scott in for Todd Stacy. Welcome to Capitol Journal. Our guest joining us tonight will be Representative Prince Chestnut, Senator Clyde Chambliss, Bureau of Pardons and Parole Director Cam Ward, and Dr. Lambiase of the UAB Medical Center here in Montgomery. But first, there's a renewed talk of gambling around the state and at the Alabama State House, but so far, no bill and no clear plan. A proposal to legalize the state lottery and casino gaming passed the House last year, but died in the Senate. And as Capitol Journal's Jeff Sanders reports, changes in leadership could complicate any effort to try again.
Alabama lawmakers are once again talking about gambling, but not with much urgency. So far, no bill has been filed, and key figures are signaling caution.
No, there's not been a bill dropped in the details. The devil's in the details on that. So until a bill is dropped, there's really not any details to be looking at. So right now, my focus is in other places that I think the state of Alabama wants our eyes to be focused on.
Senator Garland Gudger now holds the Senate's top leadership post, replacing former President Pro Tem Greg Reed, a known supporter of last year's gambling legislation. Reed stepped down to lead the state's workforce agency. His Senate seat remains vacant, and that means one less yes vote for gambling proponents. To pass a constitutional amendment, any gambling measure would need 3/5 support in both chambers, a high bar in the sharply divided Senate.
I'm hearing it may be coming back, and I have not seen a bill. I've been hearing some concepts. The concepts that I'm hearing, I can support it, but yet and still I have not seen the bill.
Senate Minority Leader Bobby Singleton says informal conversations are taking place behind the scenes, but there's no formal proposal and little sign of momentum.
You know, they're still looking at trying to bring in sports wagering, a lottery, and some kind of a gaming, at which level, whether it would be Class 2 or Class 3, whichever we think that we can get past.
In the House, lawmakers say they're waiting on the Senate to make the first move and not shy about reminding the upper chamber of last year's result.
And I think the Speaker, following his leadership, has really laid out since the end of the 2024 legislative session that any gaming legislation that we would actually look into here in the House would have to start and pass the Senate. And then and only then will we actually dig into it, see what and if anything the Senate passed, and then make a timetable and decisions of how we move forward.
Representative Chris Blackshear helped lead the 2024 House plan, which included a state lottery, sports betting, and casinos. Now, with fewer members and no bill in play, a comeback may be hard to pull off. Reporting at the State House in Montgomery, I'm Jeff Sanders for Capitol Journal.
Alabama could be a step closer to getting the Space Command headquarters after the Air Force Secretary nominee had his confirmation hearing this week. Alex Engel reports from Capitol Hill on the expected timeline for the possible SpaceCom move to Huntsville.
Air Force Secretary nominee Troy Mink appeared before the Senate Armed Services Committee this week and pledged to build up the Space Force. Alabama lawmakers have repeatedly said that once the Air Force chief gets in place, they expect a decision on Space Command headquarters. This saga moving Space Command headquarters to Redstone Arsenal could be nearing its end. Confirming the Air Force Secretary is a critical stepping stone to making that a reality, according to Alabama lawmakers. President Trump's pick to lead the Air Force, Troy Mink, testified before the Senate Armed Services Committee on Thursday.
The Space Force is in the process of growing. I will support that activity to make sure we have the right numbers and the right skill set.
Senator Tommy Tuberville, who sits on the Armed Services Committee, says Mink will be responsible for choosing the home of Space Command.
Rest assured that I will be reminding him of the multiple studies confirming that Huntsville is the best place for SpaceCom on the basis of infrastructure, cost, mission, capability, and the quality of the local community.
Even state officials are joining in on the push to make Redstone Arsenal the permanent home of Space Command. Alabama Lieutenant Governor Will Ainsworth visited the White House Thursday, urging the president to move the headquarters to Alabama from Colorado. Senator Katie Britt said earlier this month that the prospects of bringing it to Alabama look really good.
He does the assessment that decision will be made and that we believe President Trump will act quickly on it.
The Air Force found in 2021 that Redstone ranked #1 as the best location for the headquarters, but President Joe Biden chose Colorado Springs for the home of Space Command. Alabama officials have been fighting that decision ever since. They remain confident the move will happen under the Trump administration.
Getting him quickly confirmed so we can continue the process of bringing Spacecom to its rightful home in Huntsville.
A committee vote for Mink's nomination hasn't been scheduled yet. Once out of committee, his nomination will be sent to the full Senate for a vote. Reporting on Capitol Hill, Alex Engel, Capitol Journal.
Wednesday, Governor Kay Ivey issued a ban on the use of AI platforms DeepSeek and Manus. Both are Chinese-owned, and a ban puts Alabama in line with 10 other states in the U.S. taking the same measures. Governor Ivey says due to these platforms' association with the Chinese government, quote, these platforms pose an unacceptable risk to the state of Alabama and its citizens in terms of data privacy and cybersecurity, unquote. One topic lawmakers will be continuing to work on during the 2025 session is fighting crime, especially gun violence. Alabama lawmakers aren't alone. The U.S. Supreme Court upheld a federal ruling banning the selling of ghost guns. They are do-it-yourself gun kits sold online, which include all the parts for a gun. The weapons, though, are untraceable because when they're put together, they have no serial numbers to track them. Also in Alabama, a 15-year-old was arrested in Birmingham for violating the state's new ban on machine gun conversion devices, known as Glock switches. The teen was found in the 9th Terrace North area with the item and was taken into custody on Monday. One of the many projects the legislature is working on during this 2025 regular session is fighting crime. Our next guest is going to talk about fighting crime, but from a different perspective. He is Cam Ward, the director of the Alabama Bureau of Pardons and Paroles.
It's a mouthful. It's a mouthful. Good to see you, Randy. It's a mouthful.
Good to see you, sir. As I said, the legislature, one of the many things that they're taking a look at is fighting crime, because it's become a problem, not just in Alabama, but around the country, trying to make sure crime is curbed down to keep citizens safe. Your perspective is not of the actual law enforcement officers in the street, but what happens to those who are incarcerated for committing crime, sir, is it not?
Yes, sir. And, you know, my agency is a very interesting agency. It's one of the 3 largest law enforcement agencies in the state of Alabama. They're law enforcement APOS certified officers, so we kind of have a carrot and stick approach. We're charged with supervising people who've been released on parole or on probation. That population includes about 45,000 people. And so we have to supervise and monitor them, with the #1 goal being public safety. But it's a carrot and stick. The stick is, we don't want you to get in trouble, but if you do, there's punishment consequences. However, the carrot is, we want to give you all the tools necessary so that you don't go back to prison, so you don't go back and hurt somebody or cause problems or harm in society. So that's where my angle comes at it from for reentry. And I believe that's why Alabama, only the second state in the country, we joined Reentry 2030 as a means of carrying out those goals.
Let's talk about that, reentry. What is reentry? What does it mean? And why should people know what it means?
It's different for everybody. My view of reentry is this. It's public safety. It's a tool of public safety. 95% of everyone in prison and jail eventually get out. I know what I want them to look like. I want them to get a job, clean up their underlying issue, which is usually either substance abuse or mental health. And finally, I want them to get a good paying job so they're paying taxes and they're not hurting somebody. That's my goal. How do we do that? Different states do it differently. I've looked at this for a long time, and I believe it's a great public service tool that if we give these people the opportunity to get back on their feet, the likelihood of them committing a crime is absolutely drops way down.
This has been a point of discussion around the state of Alabama. What happens to those who are incarcerated? What is the Bureau doing? How can lawmakers help out with that process? How can citizens help out with that process? Are you getting a lot of feedback from both those?
We are actually, and where that comes from is we're constantly talking and discussing and educating and saying this is what this process means. So for example, we have electronic monitoring that at one point at peak had about 4,100 people that we were electronically monitoring that were on mandatory supervision. So that's the stick approach. We got to make sure we know where you are, what you're doing. The other side of it is we have our day reporting centers. We have 12-day reporting centers, plus we have our prep center in Perry County, which is a residential day reporting center. What that means, day reporting center is, it's an intensive supervision that requires maybe a drug treatment, depends on the individual, drug treatment, mental health treatment, and then we have 15 private sector companies that are partnering with us on job training. The biggest, most important partner being Ingram State Technical College.
The Prep Center in Perry County, it was the first one that has opened in Alabama, is it not, sir?
Yes, sir. In fact, it's now become a model around the country. We've had about 7 states call us. I think we'll also have a congressional delegation come down and look at it. It's being cited a lot as best practices because it is very innovative. So I look at success based upon recidivism rates. In Alabama, the recidivism meaning, do I get out of prison and go back in within 3 years? That's what most states use. That's the national standard. Our rate is 29%, making us 25th in the country. The Prep Center has been open 2.5 years. We've had over 300 graduates, and the recidivism rate has been an astounding 0%. So what that tells me is there's something working there that we need to replicate and do more statewide.
And I'm quite sure a lot of people are taking those around the country, even in the nation's capital.
Right, and so, this is Second Chance Act month. And Second Chance Act was born under President George W. Bush. He signed it into law when he was president, and every president since then, you're required to reauthorize it every year. Every president since then, Obama, Trump, Biden, and I believe President Trump's going to do it again coming up here this April. He's a big fan of the program. He has been in the past. So what that means is Second Chance is a nationwide issue. I mean, it's being discussed nationwide, and it's discussed in the vein I just talked about. It's a public safety tool. I will be up in Washington, D.C. coming up discussing this issue with our congressional delegation. We'll be talking about doing a couple of roundtables with congressional committees to discuss the importance of reentry and how, if it's done right, can be a marvelous public safety tool. Our goal in Alabama, my goal, is right now we have 29% recidivism. I'd like to see that go under 15% by the end of this decade. That would make us one of the best 5-6 states in the country.
And a lot of people, civilians, citizens, taxpayers are noticing this too and are interested in seeing what they can do to help out.
The number of places West Alabama Works, which is that regional conglomerate over there of chambers and the members they have been great supporters. We've had meetings with Manufacture Alabama. Alabama Power has been a tremendous partner. We've had so many companies come forward and say, hey, this might be something we can get involved with. And I really appreciate that because that gives it the credibility you need. It's not just some government official pushing for issues. It's truly a statewide public-private partnership.
It's something that also helps from an economical standpoint. By seeing this success, people are encouraged to come to Alabama and bring more businesses related to it to get more people involved, to get more people who are coming out of being incarcerated to be on board with it.
As I was talking with our Secretary of Workforce, Greg Reed, we only have a 57% labor participation rate. That's really harming our economy because right now, to be honest, we have great unemployment numbers. Income numbers are up. Everything's up except labor participation. So I think there's a space in there that this can be used to help fill a void on the labor participation. We've had people that go in that had a drug problem. We get them taken care of. We treat them. We go through extensive therapy, and then they go out and get a job that we've helped them get training for, making $75,000, $85,000 a year with benefits. That person, you don't see them again. And I think that should be the goal of everybody in our society is that's what I want the person to look like because it's not somebody who just lives under an overpass that's the criminal. It could be your neighbor, your friend, could be a relative. So crime affects everybody. So let's make sure we tackle it in a way that's smart.
And tackling it like you're tackling it from a career standpoint and also an educational standpoint in some cases too, are you not?
Yeah, we do a lot. Of course, we have GED programs. We have programs that Ingram State Technical College is the only technical college, community college in the country that provides what they call prison education. That's for the incarcerated and formerly incarcerated. So they've been a great partner. And I don't ever downplay that our law enforcement function's critical, but really and truly ours is more of a supervision role, whereas ALEA, your county sheriffs, your DAs, the attorney general deal with on the front end. I feel like the back end is where I come into play, but I think there's a tremendous role to reduce the repeat offender aspect if we do our job on reentry correctly.
And there are many different aspects of doing that, programs that you have that you were saying that could help out and will help out with that once to get up and running and implemented, are they not?
Yeah, we have a tree line trimming program in our Perry County Prep Center. It's been a great program. The power company did it, and they have a lot of contractors that we work with teaching these people how to get certified in tree line trimming to trim the limbs so they don't fall on power lines during winter storms or bad storms. And so it's been wildly successful, and the participants love it. They participate and they love getting that job. So there's an avenue here that we can really make some historical, not just for Alabama, but nationally. We have people talking to us saying, we want to come and look at this. This is a great program. And that's part of the talk I'll give in DC coming up, is that this is something that could be replicated. It's not rocket science, but if we do it right, it's definitely a crime reducer.
So you will be in front of lawmakers in D.C.
Yes, absolutely. Probably twice this month. This is Second Chance Month, and it's a big opportunity. They go up for, they have to reauthorize coming up. So it's going to be a great opportunity. I've visited with our delegation several times about it, and they've been incredibly helpful. Congressman Barry Moore was a co-sponsor of the Second Chance Act reauthorization. All of our delegations have been very supportive. They visited with me on it and very open-minded. And I think there's an opportunity for Alabama more than any other time on reentry to show that we can lead. We don't have to go along with the flow. We can lead the way in how reentry is handled in our state.
Citizens sitting at home, they hear this, they see you, and they want to know, okay, we're taking care of business. We are taking care of business here in state with pardons and paroles. There was a time where some people were wondering how things were flowing, if the ship was flowing steadily, its course was heading steadily to take care of pardons and parole. It is it not?
I think it is. I think the core, of course, we changed the structure of how pardon and parole was governed back in 2019, and that led to the separation of the board, the decision-making board on who gets released and who doesn't. And on the other side, my agency, the Bureau that I oversee, strictly handles once you're out. We monitor you and watch you, supervise you, ask you to check in, handle your programming, handle your evaluation, and provide services to make sure you don't go back to prison.
The big crux of it, making sure that there's no return.
There's no return. And you want that because, I mean, everything from, some of them only had a third grade reading level when they went to prison. Well, we offer free GED courses for them. You know, we offer various courses that we match it to the individual. What we see the problem is, we do a risk assessment and see what that individual's issue is, and then we tackle it. The therapy and programming addresses it that way. And ironically, it's not an extremely large part of our budget, so that's good. I mean, we're doing it for a cheap cost, but the results have been very promising so far.
Something else you mentioned before we started our interview, there's a project, a few projects that you have going on, but one in particular where you're dealing with the art world.
Yeah, this was something I was very skeptical about when I first came in, because someone said, you know, art therapy really works as far as reentry process. And I was like, I'm a Republican, I don't know if I believe this or not. I've seen it firsthand. Not only does it work, it's incredible. Every year we have an art show, and it's always hosted on this year, April 17th, at the Archives and History. It's open to anyone who wants to come, but they put on you see some of the greatest artwork ever done by the formerly incarcerated and the incarcerated. And we display that. People from the public come. They hear about the therapeutic results of it, what it means, how it's been therapeutic for these people. And at the same time, if you go to my agency, we have replicas of a lot of that artwork that we hang around the agency headquarters, just to show off that people can be redeemed. People can do better. They do need a second chance in life.
And this is what the Bureau of Pardons and Paroles they're doing.
This is what we do, and it's a day in and day out mission, but I'm very proud of that. I'm proud of that mission. I know we're going to reach our goal on recidivism reduction.
He's Director Cam Ward, Bureau of Pardons and Paroles. Sir, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Randy. As always, thank you.
Good to have you.
You too.
And Capital Journal will be right back.
You can watch past episodes of Capital Journal online at video.aptv.org. Capital Journal episodes are also available on APTV's free mobile app. You can also connect with Capital Journal and link to past episodes on Capital Journal's Facebook page. And you can listen to past episodes of Capital Journal when you're driving or on the go with Capital Journal Podcasts.
The 2025 regular session restarts next week, and some of the members of the Alabama Senate expect to be busy as well. Joining me now to talk about what is going on in the Senate is State Senator Clyde Chambliss. Senator.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate you having me today.
Thank you for joining us. Hailing from District 30.
Absolutely. Yes, sir. Just north of here.
So far this session, to say it's been busy is probably an understatement.
Oh, sure. It's always busy. You know, some 1,500 bills trying to make their way through the process, and only 300 or so will be able to do so. So it's always busy.
Always reading and figuring out, and also talking to your fellow Senate mates to get things done.
Absolutely. You know, we're fortunate that we have a diverse background and all the different legislators, and that makes for a good legislature.
Now, I know when we talk to you, a lot of times we're talking from a financial responsibility standpoint or governmental standpoint. But I want to talk about a couple of bills that you have definitely been paying attention to. One is Senate Bill 110, which is also represented in the House by House Bill 204.
Right.
Dealing with an interesting topic, axle weight ratios for trucks in the state. What is the background for this bill, sir?
Well, current law limits the axle weights to 20,000 pounds. And if they're close enough together, then there's some limitations there. And it's a very technical thing. But the whole point of the current law is to preserve the life of our roads and bridges. If you think about it, the heavier the load, the more damage, the shorter the life of the bridge. So obviously you have to replace them more, that's more money. So the proposed bill would raise those axle weights from 20 to 22,000 pounds. And there's some reasons why they're proposing it, especially dealing with some long logs and that sort of thing. So we're trying to work through how we can actually solve the problem, but not create a larger problem. And that's what we're working on right now.
Because if you think about it, Alabama is an agricultural state where agriculture is a big business component of the economy of Alabama. The logging industry, the forestry industry, very, very represented here in the state. So it stands to reason that this is something that the state utilizes to keep its economy flowing and also keep people working. But you want to make sure that everything is safe that's going on within it, right, sir?
Absolutely, and it has affected me in the past in a positive way. Back in the 1970s, my dad, through no fault of his own, had a loss of revenue through some changes and different things. And so for about 5 to 10 years, we as a family really struggled until he got a job at the paper mill. And that was a game changer for our family. So I am very sympathetic to the logging industry, to the paper industry, and wanting to do everything that I can to help them, because but for that industry, I probably wouldn't be sitting here today. I probably wouldn't be an engineer. So I want to do everything I can to help, but I think we've got to figure out how we do that without being detrimental in other ways.
So far, how have those discussions gone? Because I know we've talked about it. There's been a lot of work and a lot of talk into this particular subject already.
Well, it's one of those things that if you're not in the industry, you don't know a lot of things. So as I approach it from a technical point of view, an engineering point of view, this will solve it, this will solve it, this will solve it. But then when you talk about how that works in the field and on the ground, especially coming in and out of the woods and the maneuvering that you have to do, what might sound great on paper doesn't fit in the field. So we're working back and forth through that. A lot of it's just an education for me personally, because I've not been a logger before. There's a lot of things I don't know about it. So I'm getting that education, and we're back and forth on these ideas, and I'm hopeful.
And something you also just said, it's not just getting the logs out of the forest. You have the paper mills, you have the people who work in those paper mills, the people who work around those paper mills with that product. it goes a long way in affecting a lot of people.
Well, and think about today with all the deliveries that we have. Those boxes are made from trees. So it really affects us all in our everyday lives. It really does.
So far, how has the feedback been? Have you been getting some response? I know a lot of people who are stakeholders, I guess, have been talking to you.
Absolutely. Obviously, everybody brings their background, their experience to the table. And in this particular situation, I'm kind of in the middle of it because I have a background on the forestry side, but I also have a background on the engineering side and the technical. So I'm trying to listen to all of those different viewpoints and come up with a solution. And again, we've had great dialogue, especially this week. I guess because our minds are more focused on this with us being out on spring break this week. So I've been meeting with a lot of people this week, talking to a lot of people, and those stakeholders, even to those that are out in the woods doing the hauling. And that's given us a lot of good feedback.
If you think about it, from the north state line to the east state line, the west state line, down to the coast, there's a lot of work that goes into this particular field.
It absolutely does. It affects everything in our everyday lives, from just the timber that we think about, building our homes, paper, as I've already mentioned, cosmetics, chemicals, all the things that come out of the trees during the pulping process. It affects our lives in a significant way. Not only our lives, but those around us in other states that might not be blessed with the forest that we have.
Leads to my next question about other states watching what happens here. Have they been keeping a close eye on what Alabama is doing, sir?
I'm not sure about that, but one of the things that we're looking is after this session is having a team, a committee of those stakeholders that looks at other states and looks at other ways. There are some things that we just don't have time to do during this legislative session, so our hope is some of those things we will continue this study. We're not the only state that has this issue, so we'll look at other states, and I know some of those are watching us as well. So it'll be a back and forth and exchange of information.
Those bills, Senate Bill 110 and Senate Bill 204, how have they been received from the members of your particular chamber? Have they said they have read them or they're interested in them, or is there still a lot of talk, asking of questions?
They are very interested in these bills. Most people are like me that have some background or interest in the forestry industry, either through themselves or a family member or just their county is a big contributor in the forestry industry. So there's a lot of interest in the Senate, I'm sure the House as well, but obviously I'm talking with senators. And there's a lot of support for the forestry industry, but there's also some caution as well to make sure that we don't do more damage than we're actually solving.
Well, we'll continue to watch those two bills. But I want to switch subjects, if I can, with you for a second. Like I said, it's busy. It was busy the first half of the session. It's going to be busy the second half of the session. Right. Of course, a lot of times when we have a halfway point like this, people think when we come back, two of the biggest things are going to come up: the education trust fund budget and general fund budget, sir.
Absolutely, absolutely.
How's the talk been about those two?
Well, I think, probably next week, I think we'll see movement on the general fund, maybe, in the House. We try not to do the two budgets in both chambers at the same time because that really stretches our staff thin. So we can do it, we have done it, but it's not necessary at this point in the session. The last week or two, we have to do what we have to do, but hopefully we'll get the general fund through, and then the following week maybe do the education trust fund in the Senate, and then they'll swap chambers, obviously, and the following weeks after that, do them in the opposite chamber and work our way. We are in good shape. We've saved for a rainy day. We've changed the way that we do our finances. We've put money into reserves so that when we have those rainy days, we're able to weather those storms. They will come. We've been doing pretty well the last 8-10 years, but we're in our 11th year. No, since 2011 we've not had proration, so 14 years. That is a minor miracle for anybody that knows anything about state finances. We used to have proration every year, every other year. That is a big deal. And why is that important to the folks in our state? Because stability allows for economic development, jobs. If we have all this instability, those companies will go to other states instead of coming here. So it is very, very important that our state finances are stable. And they really are right now. For the first time, we have a reserve in the general fund. And that's very important. Just like it is in our house, our personal homes, it's important for the state as well.
Real quickly, we have about a minute left. If I could ask you a question about another subject that lawmakers have been talking about, even the governor, safety, public safety, keeping people safe.
Right.
There have been several bills that have dealt with that, from immunity for law enforcement officers to fighting that Glock switch issue. How do you think we're doing with those bills coming out of this legislature, this session?
We're doing well. They're moving. I actually carried one dealing with impersonating a police officer. That one has already made it all the way through the process, and the governor has signed it. There's 2 or 3 others that are coming along that were a little more detailed than that one. That one was fairly easy. We want our police officers to be police officers and not somebody impersonating them. So I think those are going well. It's important. If you're not safe, then all the other stuff doesn't matter. So we want our people to be safe.
He's Senator Clyde Chambliss from District 30.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir, for joining us. We'll be watching because it starts up again next week.
Yes, sir. Looking forward to it. Thank you for having me.
Yes, sir. Thank you. And Capital Journal will return.
You can watch past episodes of Capital Journal online anytime at Alabama Public Television's website, aptv.org. Click on the Online Video tab on the main page. You can also connect with Capital Journal and link to past episodes on Capital Journal's Facebook page.
You're watching Alabama Public Television, celebrating 70 years of service to Alabama.
The first half of the 2025 regular session is in the books, and it was a busy one for lawmakers. They are on their second spring break now, but when they come back, they have more business to tend to. Joining us now to give us a perspective of that first half is Representative Prince Chestnut from Selma. Representative, thank you for joining us.
Yes, it's my pleasure.
As I said, you're from Selma, and you are a member of the legislature. Tell the people a little bit more about yourself. You have an extensive background, if you will, in the legal field, do you not?
Yes. I'm a lawyer. I've been a lawyer since 2001. So what does that make? 24 years now, 23 and a half. And so in the practice, I get an opportunity to represent a lot of local elected and appointed officials throughout the Black Belt region. And I get an opportunity to go to court. I've been a judge, municipal judge for 11 years in Selma. I've also had a chance to serve as an appraisal umpire. I've been able to perform mediations. So, yeah, love the law.
And you mentioned represent people as a legal person, but you're also now representing them in your representative mode. You represent Selma and the area around Dallas County, and you've been in the House now for a number of years. And this year, this has been, you may mention it, this has been an interesting session so far, has it not been?
Of course, it's been a pretty tough session actually, because there's just so much going on, so many moving parts, and no matter how much you deal with it, you never get used to how fast things move at times. You know, at times it's a lull, things are just kind of moseying along, and then at times things are just going full force at the same time, and a lot of really important issues and bills that it almost seems like you don't have time to dissect all of them to be able to do what you need to do the work of the people in the way that they put us there to do it.
Now, I was reading your biography about being a representative. Correct me if I'm wrong, you belong to 4 committees, if I'm not mistaken. Ways and Means, Education Trust Fund Budget in the House, the Judiciary Committee, State Government Committee, and Urban and Renewal Development Committee. That's quite a bit.
Yes, sir. It's I guess, it's like one of those things they say at church. They find a person at church that does good work, and they say, well, we're going to put you to work over here, over here, over here, and over here. And so I guess that's probably what happens, from time to time. I think for those of us who will put in the work, it gets noticed, and then we get more work.
Now, I want to start, if you don't mind, talking about some things dealing with committees that you will work on. Ways and Means Education, the Education Trust Fund budget for the House. When we come back after this break, the budgets will be the talk for the most part for the rest of the session. How are you anticipating it's going to go with the Education Trust Fund budget?
Well, I think as usual, the Education Trust Fund budget, I think it's going to be well put together. Our budget chairs in the House and in the Senate do a very, very excellent job of making sure that there's not a lot of fat there, and making sure that people get an opportunity to say, hey, this is what I need in my district. Is it something that you can look at, or you think you can consider this? And they try to find a way to make it work. So I'm appreciative of that. And I think I will say that the ETF on both chambers does a very good job of fleshing out the issues and trying to deal with things as they come, being able to look at those numbers and make those numbers work. But of course, we also have to sometimes, we have to not just simply look at the numbers, but also look at the effect, right? The effect on people and on people's lives. And so, like for instance, we had the workers' comp bill that has come up this particular session. It came up last session also. I believe that the workers' comp bill is an urgent bill that we need to deal with, and we need to get it passed. We need to get it passed pretty quickly because people, there are teachers, there are bus drivers, there are people that work in the lunchroom, there are aides and staffers who, quite frankly, they need this workers' comp protection because I have a personal friend who's actually gone through a situation where he was injured moving some computers out of school, and he's in a he doesn't know how he's going to pay his medical bills. And I've heard of other heartbreaking stories along those lines, and so I would love to see us be able to get that through. And I think that Senator Command's doing good work with that bill, SB 1.
Because it was a revelation that came out during the committee meeting when this bill came up that teachers, school officials did not or were not covered for workman's comp. That was a revelation that a lot of people did not realize was in existence, or the lack of this workers' comp was something that they didn't know was actually happening.
Correct. Yes, and we owe that to our teachers. We owe that to our bus drivers. We owe that to the people who take care of our children every day.
So just as you will owe it to other workers out in the state, whether it be construction sites or business, is something that is well needed, as you just said.
Yes, and I think we can find the will to make it happen, and I believe the numbers will work. But we know this is the right thing to do, and when it's the right thing to do, we have to figure out a way to do it.
Well, as you said, the Education Trust Fund in the House is a very busy committee, both House and Senate for that fact, and it covers from a wide range of items. And these are two that were definitely, that got on people's radar pretty quickly when it came up for discussion. Now, another committee that I wanted to ask you about as well, too, one that you're serving on, is Judiciary, a very busy committee as well, too, going through a lot of bills every session.
Yes, Judiciary Committee is, it's a very tough committee. It's probably the toughest committee in the House, I would say by a long shot, because the level of legal acrobats that you have to go through to get things through. It's I really enjoy being on that committee because you get an opportunity on that committee. You have so many people who are learned and who are reading these bills and really, checking these bills for the constitutionality of the bills, figuring out whether the consequences, the repercussions, the unintended consequences of these various bills, and trying to make sure that when we get these bills, we're looking at it, because we're looking at it from a civil standpoint, we're looking at it from a criminal standpoint, we're looking at it from a constitutional standpoint, we're looking at it from a justice standpoint, from an injustice standpoint. So when you have people working in unison, trying to really get down to the bottom line and understand and make the main thing, right? Then we get an opportunity to really work on behalf of the people. And many times when you see bills come through Judiciary, they've been tested. And in many instances, when it gets to the floor, you may not have as much debate on the floor on those judiciary bills. And I think it's a testament to the hard work that the people put on that committee and to Chairman Jim Hill.
Now, you talk about people working together, you and your committee members. There were two bills in particular that you really worked on that came up. One was dealing with the immunity of law enforcement officers. That was a big topic of discussion that people were wondering how would the committee react to it. But as you said, you worked together because it was a definitely sensitive topic to talk about.
Yes, so like with the police immunity bill, that bill was carried by Rex Reynolds, who's really Chairman Rex Reynolds, who's actually a really fine gentleman, former police chief, and he really wants to do what he believes is best for for law enforcement, and also I think it's part of the governor's initiative, and. There were some concerns that I have. There's still some, a few concerns I still have with the bill and some of my colleagues. And so, but I was able to go to Rex, talk to him, and a few other my colleagues. We were able to meet with him. We were able to meet with the governor's lawyers and with Aaliyah lawyers. And we were able to get in, meetings. I think one meeting went over 2.5 hours. And we were able to flesh out a few things. We didn't agree on everything, but we were able to get a few modifications to the bill to try to deal with some of those unintended consequences that could come as a result of the bill being put in place.
Now, I said a couple of bills in committee, but there are a couple of bills throughout the legislature that I'm quite sure you kept your eyes on. Another one that a lot of lawmakers were talking about this first portion of the session dealt with the Glock switch issue, i.e. turning handguns into deadly, in many cases, machine guns. You kept your eyes on that one too as well, did you not, sir?
Yes. My understanding of when you use a firearm, it is to use it to put down a threat and to deal with a threat, right? Not to deal with things or people who do not pose threats. And the only time you pull a gun is to use a gun, right? And so when I look at the Glock switch, let's make sure that things are being guns are not being used as weapons of war on our streets.
We have just a little bit of time left, a few seconds as a matter of fact. I wanted to ask you before we got out of this interview, you're from Selma. There was a huge celebration going on in Selma for the 60th anniversary of the bridge crossing, something that's very well known or very famous, I should say, in this region. Could you give us a real quick synopsis of what happened and how things have moved forward since then?
With 60 years, we're talking about 6 decades of change. And we've seen a lot of change, and a lot of the change has been positive, right? But you have to understand this, that even though we've had change, we still have so far to go, right? Because I don't believe anyone can say with a straight face that everything is equal and that all people who are born right now have the same equal opportunity and chance as someone else, because that's not where we're at. That's not reality. But is it much better than it was 60 years ago? Absolutely. But we have to keep on pushing, and we have to get it to the point to where it is fair and an equal opportunity for everyone.
Representative Prince Chestnut, thank you for coming by and joining us and talking with us. We'd really appreciate it, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Look forward to seeing you in the second half of the session.
Right.
And Capital Journal will return.
Alabama Public Television is your place for quality educational services. Free professional development for educators and child care providers. Access to free curriculum-aligned videos, lesson plans, and instructional resources with PBS Learning Media. And all the PBS Kids programs parents know and trust. Learn something new every day with Alabama Public Television. Visit us at aptv.org/education to learn more.
It's springtime now, and people are concerned with health, mainly because of allergies having effect on a lot of people around this area. But there are other health issues that people are concerned with and will be addressed here in Montgomery within a few days. Joining me now is Dr. Lambiase of the Heersink Health Center here in Montgomery of UAB. Doctor, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Now, there's a seminar that's coming up specifically. It's aimed at health issues, and a big thrust of that is going to deal with mental health. Is that right, sir? Tell us about that.
Yeah, so this is our 3rd annual Montgomery Health Policy meeting that we're having on April 9th at the RSA Activity Center. And we're just thrilled because we've got some really outstanding speakers lined up, and we're hoping to attract people who are interested, particularly in mental health and mental health issues. As you know, that's one of the biggest problems that we have in Alabama, both in terms of the mental health of our neighbors and our citizens, and also in terms of the resources that we have to bring to bear. Alabama is 51 out of 51 in terms of the number of psychiatrists that it has. About one Alabamian about every 10 minutes commits suicide.
51 out of 51.
51 out of 51 because you count Washington, D.C. So yeah, so that's pretty bad. So we're at UAB, we're trying to focus on this, and we're trying to bring some experts together to talk about various issues in mental health. So we have a number of events planned. We've got 3 speakers lined up for the health policy meeting. The Secretary of Mental Health, Kimberly Boswell, is going to come and participate in a panel talking about what's going on and what Alabama's doing right now to combat mental health issues. We're bringing Frederick Vars over from the University of Alabama. He's a law professor who is a specialist in suicide prevention, and he's had laws passed in 5 states where people who are feeling like they may be a danger to themselves can voluntarily turn their guns in or be on a do not sell list, and then when they're feeling better or their mental health is resolved, they can take themselves off, purely voluntary. And he has some data from the Alabama VA where people have said that this might help prevent suicide. And then our keynote speaker is Kenneth Rosenberg, who's a psychiatrist from New York, who's also an NYU filmmaker, and is an expert on the care of acutely psychotic patients and people who have acute mental illness. And he's produced a film called Bedlam, which is a documentary showing about how hard it is for these people to get care. These are the folks that you see out on the streets and in the byways and highways of the area, and it's just hard for them to get their care. And so his film documents that, And so he has some ideas for solutions, and so we brought him by. One of the interesting things this year is because we have Dr. Rosenberg coming into town, we're actually going to screen his film for free at the Capri Theater on April 8th at 5:15 p.m. So really kind of very exciting stuff.
Now, this film has gotten some accord already, has it not, sir?
Oh yeah, it was presented at Sundance. It's won awards for best documentary at a number of places, but actually has screened on or streamed on the usual internet streaming services like Prime. But yeah, we're really thrilled to have the opportunity to show it here and then have Dr. Rosenberg available the next day to discuss it and answer any questions or anything like that. So it's going to be interesting.
And the name of that movie again is?
Bedlam.
Bedlam.
Yeah.
Is it a telling sign that people, citizens, are talking more about mental health? Because there was a time where it was something that people weren't comfortable with talking about, but now it is.
Yeah, and I think there still is a bit of a stigma, but I think it's going away, which is good. And I think a lot of people's both mental health, their ability to enjoy life, and their ability even to feel well is impacted greatly by their mental health. And what I would say is it's a really good thing to get rid of the stigma. If you broke your leg, you'd get it fixed, right? If you have an issue with your mental well-being, you should get that addressed too. So I'm really happy that we're able to talk about it. And now the question is, how do we make sure that people feel comfortable? How do we have adequate resources and that sort of thing?
And this brings me to what our lawmakers are doing, because it has been a topic, and in some cases, the Speaker of the House, Nathaniel Ledbetter, has said this is something that we need to address and we need to work on, and Governor Ivey has also agreed that it is. You see more and more agencies touching the subject of mental health and what to do and how it affects their operations. I know Ms. Boswell has been very busy talking with different agencies, if you will, and also going many places to talk to people about why it's important, opening new centers to help out with healthcare as well.
Yeah, and they've been, for example, there have been several things here in Montgomery that have been a result of the legislative action last session. For example, we at the UAB Montgomery Medical Campus have started a new psychiatry residency. So we're going to train young doctors to become psychiatrists, and we were fortunate to receive the support of the legislature last year. UAB has also opened a new residency in Huntsville as well. And there's going to be a new one at the University of Alabama and Tuscaloosa campus next year. So 4 years from now, we just matched our first class here in Montgomery. So our new interns in psychiatry will start in July, and we'll have our first new Montgomery minted psychiatrists in 4 years. Hopefully we can recruit some of them to stay in our area.
And this is a big step in the efforts to help with mental health in this river region.
It's huge because right now a lot of institutions that are tasked with taking care of our people with mental illness don't actually have any psychiatrists available. So this is huge, and I'm very thankful to the legislature for supporting this last year. And there's actually a bill in front of the legislature this year to use some of the opioid settlement money to fund additional residency slots, and we're very grateful that they're considering that.
Fine-tuning people to be more specific at handling cases that deal with mental health issues, because at one time people would say, well, if there was a problem dealing with someone who may have some mental health crisis, if you will, call the police. They may be called the paramedics. But now you have people who are, correct me if I'm wrong, sir, fine-tuned to help address issues, acute issues with someone who's dealing with a mental health crisis.
Yeah, I mean, sadly, the very often still in 2025 in Montgomery, the police and the emergency room and EMS are where those things are being dealt with. But there are people who could deal with it, and then that's really our job, is to get more of those folks into this region, and so that we can deal with it.
Are you seeing, offhand, an influx, if you will, of students coming in, looking at this particular avenue of a career of study for them?
Yeah. Well, you know, our psychiatry residency received 500 applicants for 3 spots. So we interviewed 100 people and we just matched. So yes, I would say I think 10 students from UAB's class of about 190 students went into psychiatry. So I think that's really important. And then, you know, our chief of psychiatry, Dr. Will Rutland, has just started in partnership with the city of Montgomery a street psychiatry program where we get to go out and meet the people where they're living, unfortunately, and provide care there to help them get back into some semblance of a more normal life. And that has been extremely popular with the students and with people who want to go into the field. You know, a lot of our students are extremely altruistic, and so it's our job and goal is to give them an outlet for that. And so we would, like I said, the psychiatry residency is one way. Looking at other ways to support mental health is another way. And then the health policy meeting is a way where we can all meet and discuss and try and come up with ideas for our policymakers.
The date for that conference again is?
The conference is April 9th. It starts at 8 o'clock at the RSA Activity Center. The movie is at 5:15 on April 8th at the Capri Theater. Okay. All free.
He's Dr. Lou Lambiase of the UAB Health Clinic here in Montgomery. Doctor, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
I appreciate it.
Thanks.
We appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
Take care.
That would do it for this episode of Capital Journal. The regular session restarts next week, so we'll go back to our weekly schedule of shows from the Alabama State House. From all of us here at Alabama Public Television, I'm Randy Scott. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you on Monday. Until then, take care.